Welcome to the Koffeine Cafe, where we don't serve coffee, we serve horror puppets. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Z.
And welcome to the first episode of Declassified, a series where we take a deeper dive into mysteries developing and unsolved. Today we'll be looking at a new horror ARG that has become the hyperfixation of many over the past couple weeks.
Are you sure it's not just you?
Trust me, every social media I am on has his face.
I'm pretty sure it's just you.
Everywhere I look, I see his face. Anyways, this is Welcome Home, Declassified. Welcome Home is a horror ARG project made by artist Clown, who creates artworks and stories that are, in his words, both macabre and delightsome, and this project certainly does fit the bill. Taking notes from popular children's IP Sesame Street, The Muppets, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and other puppet-based children's shows, it revolves around a fictional children's program that was supposedly cancelled due to unknown reasons. There's little to no information about it being preserved until this website comes in with all sorts of tidbits akin to lost media sites popping out of nowhere. The program supposedly first aired on October 11, 1969, and would play on Saturday mornings where the viewer would follow a colorful cast of puppets and their adventures around the set of a neighborhood called Home. It last aired sometime around 1974, at least according to the most recent date on a found script. Despite all this, something sinister seems to be lurking behind the felt fabric.
I'm actually surprised that I was the first one to find this before you did, and at the same time, it took you a while to hyperfixate on this.
It took a couple days and it had to sink in, but now I am fully and blessedly obsessed with the horror Muppets.
I mean, it's a macabre story with a guy puppet who has eyes like that. Come on, it's right there. Also, he's a puppet again.
It's not my fault that it took a while. The cast of Welcome Home features 9 residents, all with their own distinct personalities and rather creative hobbies. Julie Joyful is from a family of rainbow monsters who lived in a cave in the woods before moving into Home. She's described to be the most joyful of all the puppets, often associated with playing games and flowers, and has the ability to make flowers bloom by talking to them. Sally Starlet is, funnily enough, an actual star that came into the neighborhood as a shooting star. She is essentially a theater kid, often being depicted as a director in many of the program's play-related skits. These plays would often be about fairy tales that would take an abnormal turn at Sally's expense, unfortunately. Poppy Partridge is a rather large bird coming from the forest surrounding the neighborhood as well before moving into Home. She is often shown to be rather frantic or frazzled despite her segments involving hobbies such as knitting or baking, and it was usually other puppets that did so for her, one for more practical puppet use and also, narratively, because of her fear of appliances. Eddie Deer is the best and only male man in Welcome Home. He's described to be clumsy, forgetful, but still reliable. There's even a running gag that he often forgets the name of his own hometown. He's also shown in many segments to share his interest of arts and crafts with other residents. Howdy Pillar is the neighborhood's shopkeeper, with a bodega called Howdy's Place, or affectionately, the Bugdega. He came from an apple core, also from the forest surrounding Home, with a number of siblings he'd named throughout the show's run. He would exchange his goods for jokes, silly observations, fun ideas, and unique gadgets. Barnaby B. Beagle is a silly neighbor, the resident jokester who once lived in a farm and moved into Home. He apparently does skits involving a lot of stand-up and even juggling. He's also noted to be Wally's best friend, sharing color palettes, hearts on their feet, and even outfits. Frank Frankly is the grumpiest neighbor in Welcome Home, but he's not all that bad. He's also the bookworm and an expert on butterflies. The residents often go to him when they need an answer to a question, but he would often be discredited for comedic effect. He's also noted to be Julie's best friend. Wally Darling, my beloved,
of course,
is a major character in Welcome Home, often the focus of merchandise and advertising. He is also shown in every episode and book. Wally is the resident painter with many segments involving him drawing and painting with viewers. One of the most interesting features about Wally, however, is his home. Home, on the other hand, is often regarded to be the 9th resident of the neighborhood, as he's the only house to have eyes and appear to quote-unquote speak. Well, more of make noises as a response. The features of home, such as the doors, chimney, and windows, are also supposedly quite animated in the show as well. And of course, there is the 10th resident in the form of you, the viewer, who is often referred to by the residents as a new neighbor. The website itself notes that even if you don't live here, you're still one of its most important denizens, which is fairly common for these types of television programs, but given the context of this project, well, who really knows what this implies? Who's your favorite character?
Oh, so far, looking at all these characters, Barnaby seems to be my favorite, because, I don't know, there's something whimsical about him. Who's your favorite character? I mean, should I even ask?
I feel like it's fairly obvious who it is.
It's interesting how, when they describe the characters, they're kind of written as if they have some sort of backstory.
Yes.
Most of which have some sort of other character implied to be part of their origin. Like, say, Howdy Pillar's other siblings that all came from an apple, or Poppy Partridge's mom, or even Julie's sisters. It's kind of implied that they have family outside of home.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are only 9 residents excluding you. So where are they? Where did they go?
Yeah, none of them are actually from home.
They moved here.
Yeah.
And the weird thing that gets me here is, if they moved here, where did they come from? And it's a subject that is slightly touched upon, like, oh, they came from here, they came from there, but it's mostly ambiguous to the point where even one of them doesn't remember where specifically.
Yeah, they always get it wrong. The running gag is that they keep mixing up the name of their hometown for a place they've delivered their letter to, implying that it's a place outside of home. So it's interesting.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. It certainly leaves a lot of speculation as to where these characters come from specifically, but though these aren't touched upon, what exactly do we know about these guys and the lore so far?
The only thing we know about them is the kind of arts and crafts that they're into, and a vague idea of where they're from. The only character I think that is noted to not come from outside of home, the neighborhood, is Wally.
Okay, go on.
Everyone else seems to have come from a place outside of home, but Wally is never mentioned to have any origin elsewhere. Quite a huge portion of his characteristics involve his actual house. Not to say that he is from home, the neighborhood, just that he is quite linked to home, the house.
Almost as if it's an Axis Mundi.
Oh. That does make sense with how Wally's home is at the very center. The website itself is playful and colorful, with Wally Darling being the main header of the site's homepage. And here it has several more pages that describe the project, its progress of restoration, as well as a few vague details about how it began in the first place. The news page speaks for itself as it contains updates on the restoration project and general messages from the team or individual working on it. The most recent update from this page, at least from scripting, is interesting as it mentions someone has reached out to the team to showcase their findings in a physical exhibit. Who this person may be, we don't know. The links page is so far the most harmless page, at least as of right now, where it simply contains more art or GIFs showcasing some love for the Welcome Home program and characters. When you go down to the images, none of them seem to show any interest except for 2. The most immediate being Barnaby, which just redirects you to an isolated version of the image, and Wally. Not clickable right now, but let's put a pin on that. The main home, pun intended, page is a typical home page showing a brief summary about what this project's all about, as well as basic details on the Welcome Home show itself. This page features old remnants of materials that were found, as well as digitally reproduced pieces of artworks from the program. There are also speculative illustrations and animation. The only thing that stands out from this page, though, is an oddly skewed W in one of the paragraphs with Wally's name. And it looks random, a little off-putting, but it's not exactly the most menacing. The guest book is also an interesting page, as it's where page visitors can submit their own messages to the team, and perhaps someone else. The guest book features not only messages, but also little doodles around a few posts that, at face value, seem like nothing more than decor. However, if you open these images on a new tab, these files are named like responses to some specific messages, responses that seem to be coming from Wally Darling. But wait, there's more. If you highlight the rest of the empty post boxes in the last page, there's even some hidden messages from Wally himself, but we'll be going back to that a little later. The About page holds the most amount of information regarding the project. with an FAQ portion of this page including some vague details on how the team found all of these materials and why they decided to make this project in the first place. The answers themselves seem to be double entendres, which makes them just as suspicious. The first thing that might strike the viewer as odd is the absolute battered condition on one of the found illustrations. It looks like it was vandalized rather aggressively. The second thing that may catch your attention is that there's a portion of the text here that has jumbled up letters that can only be deciphered when highlighted. Whereas before it read, "I hope this website would grab the attention of someone who has seen the show before and could tell us more about it." Now it reads as, "When I unwrapped the first letter, I felt it, I heard it. Open, 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 I want it out, I'm going to get it out." Keeping that in mind, when highlighting other segments of the FAQ, it seems that there are another entity that may be answering these questions, implying that the revival of interest for Welcome Home may be causing this entity an immense amount of pain. The neighborhood page has a small map of the entire neighborhood with each house containing information about each of its residents. Most of the information from the earlier character summaries come from here. The first thing that stands out is a fun but somehow still ominous link attached to the word "you," which leads into a separate page assigning you as a neighbor, with the text slowly forming, "Wally is your best friend." Also, while each character has a rather cute section describing them individually with a colorful go back link to get back to the main neighborhood page, Wally's page exit button says goodbye in black ink. But that's not all of Wally's secrets, as looking closer at home, there appears to be something lurking underneath.
Yeah, we went through this during a stream like a couple weeks ago when we first touched upon this with everyone. And there is quite a lot of juicy stuff here.
It's very juicy, very juicy.
Yeah, like there's a lot of hidden messages. Again, the double entendres on the About page. A lot of the things here seem to be pointing to a certain narrative. We'll touch upon this later on the theories section, but I'm actually very, very curious on where this story might go.
Aren't we all? That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So yes, as you can see with all of this, this isn't your regular website, as it seems that someone may have hijacked it. There also seems to be a secondary author to the website, one that is actively trying to communicate with you. One that seems to have adopted the persona of Wally Darling. Whether or not this is the man himself is yet to be concluded, however, the evidence is plastered all over the website. But going back to this main website, it seems that Wally could be communicating with us via the randomly skewed letters found in each page. And if you put these in a certain order in the URL, you may find some hidden pages that aren't easily accessible from the main site itself. The first site that would stand out is one that can be found upon clicking the link that lies underneath Home, which can be accessed by using the tab button. This link leads to a site with the URL "so below," revealing this honestly horrifying image. It's deeply disturbing, and it appears as though Wally Darling is inside Home, begging or perhaps worshipping him. Why? Well, we'll see a little later. Aside from this, there are 5 different URL codes that one can use to further explore the lore outside of the website's surface. These codes coming from letters that stand out from each page on the website. And while we initially only found 3, with a little digging and help from our chat, we managed to find the rest of the letters. So here they are. EOBWXY leads to footage of a television playing nothing but static and white noise with what looks like random interferences and a pair of dark eyes at certain points. The person holding the camera appears to be moving closer to the TV until we only see static. Another version that has these letters YXWVOE leads to an error page where if you click on the phone, you are led to an MP3 file with Wally singing Beautiful Dreamer, to whom we assume is Home. He ends with, "That's all Barnaby taught me. Do you like it?" And after, presumably Home, responding with some knocks and creaks, Wally replies with, "That's good, I think." YWXOEV leads to a GIF of Home with another GIF of a different set of eyes playing quickly above it, as well as the words "open" beneath. VOYWEX leads into another image of Wally's eyes with the words, "Hello, you're there. I can't see you. Do you see me? Then stay quiet. I love him. A lot." That's not the words that were included there. I just wanted to say it.
Simp.
Opening this image in a new tab as well will reveal Wally's full face and my new wallpaper. Lastly, at least for now, WOXYVE leads into images of a script all cut up, with another GIF of Wally's eyes. And while the script is still incomplete, this is what it looks like in full. There are a few other secrets hidden in the main website itself, specifically in the speculative and restored images found in the Welcome Home page and the About page. I do want to preface this by giving credit to the Welcome Home Neighbors subreddit where I found the rest of this information, as they're very, very thorough. But if you look into the animation of Frank spinning his head, specifically in the colored one with the books behind him, they seem to be saying, "Hello, it's you-know-who, I'm your neighbor." And the rest of the text is a little blurry, so we didn't get to see it, but you get the idea. There's another image that's in black and white that appears to be from a newspaper clipping, and there's some random letters on the right-hand side of it that seem to be random because they're cut from a newspaper clipping, but the very last letters form "Hello, you." So yeah, that's incredible. And lastly, there was another one that I found particularly difficult to see, but a lot of people have put up the "We'll be right back" card in black and white, upping the contrast, zooming in on the little text of "We'll be right back." The hidden text being "May your home be."
Honestly, it seems like a lot of these is someone trying to communicate with us.
Yeah.
Is it Wally? Is it home? I'm not too sure. But whoever it is, it seems like they're really, really trying to connect with someone from outside of the website.
Yeah, and we're not exactly sure if that's us as the viewer or a very specific person.
Yeah. There is another thing that, well, there are two things that I'm curious about. One, upon first viewing the part where Wally says something along the lines of like, "Do you see me? I can see you." And then he ends it with, "Then stay quiet." When first reading that, I thought it was kind of malicious towards us, like, "Oh, then like stay quiet," you know?
Yeah.
But then I realized, is it one of those he's trying to say keep quiet because something's listening? Or something else is listening?
That is possible.
Yeah, because it's kind of also implied that Home can hear Wally, and if Home can hear Wally sing, can Home hear us?
That's actually really nuts, and adds to some theories that we ourselves have also tried to concoct.
Yeah. Another thing is from the "We'll be right back" card, "May your home be." That could be interpreted as many things, such as "May your home be" what? Is there a missing area there? Is there a missing word? Or "May your home be," as in leave your home alone.
Possible.
Or, at the same time, is it "May your home be," as in let home exist?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could just be overreading this, but just theorizing before the actual theories section, it does kind of add to that idea that what if this is being orchestrated by Home?
Likely.
Yeah. Again, these are all going to be expanded upon later, but as for now, don't you have any messages for the audience?
Aha! I sure do! Before we get into said theories that we were talking about, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, World Anvil. Building an ARG as complex as this isn't easy, and it definitely helps to have something to keep all your notes and lore in one place. I mean, it certainly helps us out with our own totally not ARG in progress, haha.
Ha 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 ha. Ha ha.
JK, unless... And with our code, KoffeineYT, you too can have access to this website at 40% off your first year, with the added bonus of helping us out here in the cafe. So go to worldanvil.com/koffeine and use the code KoffeineYT to get 40% off your next purchase. Any series with this many secrets would eventually lead into a community with numerous theories and speculation. It opens up a lot of questions, such as, why was the show cancelled in the first place? Why are the remaining remnants of the show seemingly destroyed? And how exactly is the team or individual getting all of these materials? And more importantly, what the hell is actually going on? So, we move in to one of our first theories, the dual Wally theory. Wally, Darling, and Home are prominent figures in this program, with a lot of merchandise, advertisements, and episodes, making them one of the biggest focus in a lot of theories, including this one. It appears as though that there's some sort of parasitic relationship between Home and Wally, where it's implied that Home may be something demonic, or perhaps even a conduit for demonic, while Wally, on the other hand, could possibly be either the very person who summoned this demon, or is an unfortunate victim to this greater entity that's trying to consume him and expand its influence. So Wally and Home are intrinsically linked, so much so that it's as though there are two different Wallys. Evidence number 1. If we take a closer look at the guest book, there are a few secrets that seem to suggest that there are two Wallys, one being more calm, more serious, and more antagonistic, while the other being scared, confused, and even naive. We mentioned earlier that there are doodles in the guest book that appear to be responses coming from Wally, and this Wally appearing more friendly, docile. However, as we progress through the different pages, he seems more distressed. We know that no other resident in the neighborhood is responding to these messages, nor are they currently able to, which is noted by Wally saying that he'll pass messages on to his friends. However, after a while, he seems rather troubled by the fact that he can't seem to contact any of them. He can't find them. He doesn't react nicely either to insinuations of him being evil. The other secret is, of course, the hidden messages sent in by quote-unquote Wally that you can see if you highlighted the whole 8th page. This Wally seeming more sinister. Even one of his names appear to have a strange distortion. He speaks more firmly with statements like, "You won't write back," or "You're looking for me. Silly, silly." There's a stark difference between the Wally that draws around the guest's messages in his friendly and rather childish tone, and the Wally that appears to be aware of the guest who is reading the actual page. It is possible that this sinister Wally could be Home, or rather Home is making use of Wally's persona and body in order to attract or communicate with the viewer. I mean, definitely at least try to communicate better, since we know that Home doesn't speak with words at all. So how else can he tell us what to do? Evidence number 2. There are many small details that showcase Wally and Home's strange relationship together. One small detail can be found in a neighborhood page when going through other character pages, which I'll say go back in colorful text, but Wally's page simply says goodbye in black ink. It feels more threatening than friendly. Even looking at the URLs outside the main page, we can see more direct interactions between Home and Wally that aren't very warm or inviting. The So Below link, as we've said, shows Wally sort of bloody, begging, or even worshipping the seeing eye of Home. The audio file with Wally singing sounds like he's soothing Home like a friend. And you can argue that it's a rather sweet thought. There's just something about how he asks Home, "Is that good?" followed by the knocking and creaking of the home as a response, and Wally's last words being, "That's good, I think." Now there's definitely a lot here that's up to interpretation. Did his soothing song work, or did it make things worse? Is Wally in cahoots with Home, or is he under Home's influence? Or is he being held hostage? There are different aspects to these pieces of evidence that could say yes to honestly any one of them. Evidence number 3. There's a lot of imagery in Wally and Home's relationship that depict rather demonic or even generally otherworldly vibes. The So Below link, of course, as a reference to As Above, So Below. A solid movie I would still like to watch, which means that whatever happens in this higher realm or plane of existence also happens in a lower plane of existence. Perhaps it can link Home as the higher plane and Wally as the lower plane, or it can link Home as a sort of portal to the higher plane and Wally still as the lower plane that this strange and sinister entity can use. There's also a lot of spiral imagery found in Friendly Wally's colorful doodles and the dark ominous spiral underneath Home. This could be the very portal that's opened to the entity, summoned by either Wally or the person who started this website or even the person who provided the restoration projects team with materials. Either way, Wally's got the brunt of the consequences here. There's also this piece of artwork that is technically no longer canon as far as we know, and we consider that it's no longer considered canon, but there are aspects to it such as So Below that still linger in the Wayne website's content. So concepts from these pieces of evidence can mean a lot more in the grander scheme of canon that can carry over to the rest of the lore without really implying that Wally's a demon himself or Baphomet, but just that these show that the secondary Wally could be linked to something demonic, and that the Wally we see in the show may not be all in for the ride.
First of all, it's interesting how you mention House maybe using Wally as some sort of mouthpiece.
Yes.
What if? I mean, it's kind of there. Wally is a puppet.
Yes.
Specifically, House's puppet.
Oh.
Right?
Sometimes you get removed from the idea that, oh right, they're puppets.
Right? Yeah. But like, in the sense that, like, of course there are puppets, like the sock puppets, the felt puppets, the wooden puppets. We don't really think about anything beyond that in the context of like a show like this. But when you think of puppet in terms of politics, it means that someone is being used as a mouthpiece for some other entity, most likely malicious or deceiving.
True,
right?
True. And translating that into a more supernatural or horror type of genre.
Yeah, so it could add to the idea of two Wallys, where one is Wally and the other one is the puppet Wally.
Yes.
The second idea being House is possibly demonic and is actually the thing that is controlling everything, specifically Wally.
I like that. I like where that's going.
Another thing that I just thought about now, as we're recording this, because for a little context on how we got to these theories, we were talking about this in a cafe, and I think the bartender looked at us weird because we were just talking about horror Muppets for like 2 hours. But we're still making theories until now.
Maybe we're no longer under the seeing eye of the judging bartender.
Yeah, barista. Yeah, wrong word for me. Anyways, as above, so below. You mentioned what it meant before,
yes,
but it only kind of sunk in for me now. As above, so below. Whatever happens in the higher plane happens in the lower plane. Does that imply that if we take into account we are the higher plane in the context of a TV show?
Oh my god!
Right? You see where I'm going with this,
Oh my
right?
god, that's so nuts!
Is House or is Wally or even Evil Wally trying to get out into reality by replicating whatever they're doing there into real life through the website?
That's so nuts. I adore that.
Right?
I never thought of that.
Right, so essentially we're being manipulated as if we're the puppets.
Ooh,
Right?
I love that.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah, again, these are just theories. Like, this section is all about theories. We can't say they're canon because we're not clown. And, you know, honestly, this is so amazing. I love theorizing about mysteries.
Me too. This is incredible.
Yeah, which brings us to my next theory. And by my next, it's me hyperfixating on this one specific paw print.
Truly. Resurrecting Barnaby. All throughout the experience, we can see evidence of the residents not really being there anymore, except for Wally Darling. For why and how, we don't know. However, there is some evidence to suggest that one of the biggest players here could also be Barnaby. Given at the very first page, Wally's sitting on a rock with what appears to be Barnaby's paw print on the side looking like a bloody handprint. Put a pin on that. So, what if Wally's trying to bring back everyone, but very specifically Barnaby? And I mean, they are noted to be best friends. Who knows? Evidence number 1. Z's hyperfixation on a singular paw print. Paw prints are of course a symbol associated with Barnaby given that he is a dog. But aside from that, there are many instances where we see this imagery play out with Wally specifically. The first instance can of course be found on the landing page where Wally sits on aforementioned bloody rock, and I mean it's not red, but it certainly looks like it. And well, we also see that Wally likes painting Barnaby's paws, a gesture of friendship. It's completely harmless and shows that yes, they were indeed super close. However, one of the last things we see involving these paw prints are these freaky red ones outside of Barnaby's house, and now that one definitely looks like blood. There's already a pair of blue ones that we can regularly associate with Barnaby, but the red ones coming from the other side of the house are a little jarring. Evidence number 2. There's an interesting bit found in the About page where it's noted that there may have been a whole crafting kit to make your own Barnaby, and on a marketing level that makes sense since he's a patchwork dog, but the idea of having a make-your-own Barnaby is already eye-raising, because if we run with the idea that Barnaby's dead, then one may be able to bring him back. There's no specific method except for, obviously, the sewing patterns. I mean, in the news page, there's an illustration of Wally sitting on a chair with patterns, colors, and prints that seem to echo Barnaby, so he has enough material to make him, but the only thing that's missing is how exactly will he be brought to life? And the answer may lie in the next piece of evidence. Evidence number 3, you. It's very interesting to see how very direct Wally is towards the viewer, as he refers to the viewer, the guest, as you. And this is a fairly common thing in these types of shows to make the child viewer feel welcome as part of the show. However, given that this is about horror puppets, there could be a lot more to this relationship than it lets on. Let's look at the hidden link for you in the neighborhood page, whereupon clicking it leads to a character page for you, and it simply says, Wally is your best friend, which can strike one as odd because we know that Barnaby is our best friend. Why was it also placed in a hidden section? We're obviously not Barnaby. Unless... As you can see here, there may be some evidence that something happened to Barnaby. We don't know what it is, or whether or not Wally was related to it. However, our speculation is that Wally is trying to rebuild Barnaby, and he may be rebuilding it with you. Classic way to answer how he's going to is that he would need your soul in order to reanimate what remains of Barnaby. There's an illustration from Clown that is also no longer considered canon, showing Wally puppeteering what seems to be a Frankenstein lifeless Barnaby. Again, this is not canon, but there may be elements from it that can echo later in the entire lore, but not with the exact message portrayed within the actual artwork.
In regards to the actual artworks, though, there's a lot of body horror imagery within just the artwork, the horror side of the artwork on the actual project page, not the... Okay, how do I differentiate it? The meta page rather than the actual lore page.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of body horror there, so I wouldn't be surprised if that element of like body horror makes its way into canon, specifically from this non-canon artwork, I mean.
Yeah, not necessarily what it's trying to say, but the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the idea of using a person to revive, say, a puppet is kind of overused at this point, which I kind of get why Clown might be moving away from that if it is the intention of the uncanonization. Because there is FNAF, where you take either the soul of a child or the corpse of a man and put it inside an animatronic, which sounds very similar to the theory here. And I may have come up with that part because I've been playing too much FNAF recently.
The FNAFification of our minds.
Exactly. But there's also the idea of other body horror that we haven't touched upon in recent years. Like the idea of maybe using body parts to create some sort of Leatherface Barnaby. Or, like, I guess Barnaby comes out looking like some Cenobite from Hellraiser.
Excellent.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, and this all stemmed from one paw print that looks vaguely like a bloody handprint on a window.
Incredible, really, how it went that far.
Incredible, honestly. It was the very first thing I latched on while watching Nightmind's video on this, actually.
And you never let go.
I never let go.
Just like I'm never letting go of Wally's hand.
What?
Anyway, that brings us to our third theory, the recasting of Welcome Home. This theory focuses on the idea that for one reason or another, the residents of Welcome Home were once real people who worked on the show, who were transformed into puppets and were essentially tortured through the show itself, and that the show could have been cancelled because none of them survived, except for Wally and Home. Now, whether it be Wally or Home or the team, or the mysterious donator who may be orchestrating all this, they could be trying to recast the missing characters through the new eyes that are lingering on the project itself. After all, if you know about it, it's already inside of you. Evidence number 1. If we were to go back to the character descriptions from the neighborhood, many of them, well, actually all of them, except for Wally, actually don't come from the neighborhood of home, but rather they simply moved in there. It's also notable that a few of them don't actually know where they're from or have any known origin, as we mentioned before. I mean, sure, there's a running gag that Eddie doesn't know the name of their own hometown, and there's Frank who doesn't have any information regarding his own origin yet, but it's still ominous. There's also certain elements in characters like Sally Starlight, who is the director of Welcome Home's play-related skits, where it's noted that she gets into rather absurd situations that are outside of her own control. There's also the idea that logic and reasoning brought by Frank are often thoughts that are brushed aside for comedic effect as if they're just silly. Evidence number 2. As we go back to the guest book, there are some charming points where you see some guests share a similar, if not the same name as the characters in Welcome Home. Wally would typically respond to these like, "Oh, Sally, is that you?" as if mistaking the guests themselves for being their friend in the show. This can be taken as a joke or even as an innocent response, but still, with the context of this being a horror project, it may suggest something more. In fact, if a guest has Wally's name as well, he seems to like it, or at least we can assume that he likes it, as Wally responds with "our name," as if merging himself and this person together, assimilating their identity with his. It can be interpreted in, honestly, a lot of different ways. And this is relevant to this theory because, well, we see that Wally grows increasingly distressed that he can't seem to contact or see any of his friends. So seeing someone with the same name as them may alert him that, hey, maybe that is them, right? Evidence number 3 brings us back to Barnaby's theory. As since we mentioned the create your own Barnaby kit existing, who's to say there aren't similar kits for other characters where the viewers can fill in their shoes? They're all different kinds of characters, sure, rainbow monsters, stars, caterpillars, but the fact remains that they are still puppets. There's also another image that is no longer considered canon, but we'd still like to bring up because it's really cool, but also because it contains some sort of clue that, again, won't be exact but have a similar vibe. This illustration with Frank surrounded by puppet limbs may suggest a sort of puppet purgatory or storage of parts. And for what reason? Well, we can only guess. There's another illustration with Wally ominously carrying around what looks like an unconscious Eddie, or at least we hope he's only unconscious. And these pieces of evidence point towards Wally, or whatever entity is possessing Wally, to be plotting something, building something, or creating something out of what remains of Welcome Home. And we don't know why.
Okay, so essentially, going back to the Barnaby being puppeteered by Wally illustration, it's not canon anymore. However, this Eddie is. This Eddie art piece is, and it looks like Wally is just carrying Eddie. But another way to look at it, if I'm not hyper fixating on the wrong thing, is that this may be either just a costume that is ready to be stuffed, or this is a viewer who recently got stitched into Eddie, being dragged back into home.
I like that.
Right? I mean, this is the very last thing we found before recording, so theories are very fresh in that avenue. And again, we're also kind of making this up as we go along here, but here's another theory that I just thought of. To supplement this, let's go back to the idea of as above, so below, as well as the idea of the axis mundi, which is kind of like the center point of a community, right?
Yeah.
The idea of the axis mundi is that it's kind of like the axis that connects it to a higher plane.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A higher plane that's also kind of referenced in as above, so below. Whatever happens in the higher plane happens in the lower plane. And what is that axis?
It's Wally's home, isn't it? It's home.
It's home, right?
Yeah.
It's home. So whatever happens in real life will affect this fictional show. So if the show gets cancelled, IRL, the universe ceases to exist.
Oh, how?
Which means all these characters disappear. Except for Wally and Home. Now, is it possible that either Wally or most likely Home is trying to manipulate the lower plane so that it gets revived, or rather rebooted in real life by taking elements of the higher plane and bringing it into the lower plane?
That's some real tinfoil hat tomfoolery you got there. I love it.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense, right? We never actually think about the effects of the lower plane on us. Like, say, when we think about our favorite TV show, we never really think about the idea that the TV show itself affects us in our real life.
True,
but
true.
It does. They do. Lots of arguments IRL happen because of fictional characters. Hello there, fandom people. A lot of policies are made because of stuff that happens in media. Like what happened with House of the Dead, I think? And Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
To regulate video games in real life because they were too bloody. And that's just two examples of how a fictional world has influenced our real life. What if, without the influence of the higher plane, House is trying to manipulate the lower plane so that we unknowingly revive Home, the city, the small town, I mean.
Love that. I've always wanted to be a puppet.
And now I think you can.
Hooray! But again, these are just our theories based on what we know so far. If there are any more developments with Welcome Home, we'll definitely make a part 2 on this episode, recapping and theorizing anything else that may come from the brilliant mind that is Clown.
This wasn't actually supposed to be the first episode of Declassified. We have other scripts in the works for this, so look forward to that. It just happened that a new mystery ARG horror thing involved puppets, and as we all know, Lisa is obsessed with puppets.
Would you just look at him though? Look at him. Silly guy.
Sure. Anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of Declassified. Again, this is a series where we'll be looking into mysteries, both developing and unsolved.
If you enjoyed this video and want to see more of it, please leave a like, and you might also find this one interesting. We'd also like to thank our members, Shifter and Butter, as well as our cafe producer, Nick, for supporting us, and if you guys would also like to do so, you can join in our memberships.